I'm Tom Gilbert for the Archive of American Television. Today is November 24th, 1997, and I'm conducting an interview with Madeline Pugh Davis. We are in Los Angeles, California. Madeline, could you state your full name?
Madeline.
Are we ready? Okay, sorry. Madeline, could you state your full name?
Madeline Pugh Davis.
And your name at birth?
Madeline Pugh.
Do you have any nicknames?
Sometimes people call me Maddie.
And your birth date?
March 15th, 1921.
And the city and state of your birth?
Indianapolis, Indiana.
Tell us about Indianapolis, where you grew up. Your father, your mother.
Well, I grew up in, I suppose, middle class atmosphere. My father was the head of the real estate department of a bank, and my mother was a housewife. My mother really, I think, was ahead of her time and was maybe an early feminist. She played very ferocious tennis and won a lot of cups, and I have two sisters, and she was always saying, make something of yourself. She didn't say what it was, but she was very ambitious for us all to do something.
Were your sisters older or younger?
They were older. I'm the youngest one. Mm-hmm.
What type of activities interested you as a child? Did you read a lot? Did you go to the movies a lot?
I was a big reader. My grandmother read to me, and I was always asking for books for Christmas and reading them, starting and going through them. My mother said, "You'll have nothing to read tomorrow," because I had read all my Christmas books. And I've always been a big reader. And we used to go to the movies. People did in those days, went to movies every Saturday.
How about radio? Did you listen to a lot of
Oh,
radio?
sure, you listen to radio.
Did you favor any type of show on the radio? Did you like the comedies or the dramas or the serials? Or?
No, I didn't listen to serials. We just listened to the nighttime shows, you know, Bob Hope and Amos and Andy and that sort of thing. And my father used to listen to the boxing matches. So I can tell you the early who won and who beat Max Baer and things like that.
Did the Depression affect your family in any great way?
The Depression affected our family a lot. My father lost all his money, and he had it in real estate, and you couldn't give real estate away, so we lost the house and the car and the whole thing. And it gave me a feeling of not throwing money around a lot, and that you always work, and you sort of scrounge around, get a summer job and that sort of thing. It bothered my father a lot, and he wouldn't go into bankruptcy. He didn't think that was right. And so he spent a lot of his life paying back people, and it was a big influence, I think, as with most people. I was very little,
Mm-hmm.
but I was aware something was going on.
But the family stayed together throughout the...
Oh, yes, it wasn't. And my grandmother lived with us, and we were still, of course, the family wasn't that bad, and he didn't have to relocate. But you remember, it just makes an impression.
When you were a child, did you have aspirations for any one goal? Or, as you said, your mother said be something. Was there something that you latched onto?
Well, I want to be a writer from the time I was about 10, I think. And I wrote a play. What I really wrote was the program and talked one of my friends into being in it with me. I found it the other day, and it had 3 acts, and we each played 2 parts, and I think we had lived it. And that was my first effort. Then I started writing poetry, really verse. And so I really wanted, then I decided I would be a newspaper writer.
Were you a good student?
Yes.
And did you write for your high school paper? Did you get into journalism that way?
Yes, we had a daily, and I was editor one of the days.
And was there any particular mentor in your life?
Well, I later found out I went to a wonderful high school, Shortridge High School in Indianapolis, and they've written a book about it. And I didn't know that because all my family went there, my sisters and my mother, and I thought that's what high school was. But they were very supportive. They had a lot of clubs, and when I think of the teachers took their time after school, I belonged to a lot of different, when I say clubs, like the fiction club and the history club. And in my history club was Kurt Vonnegut. I mean, my fiction club was Kurt Vonnegut. And a man named Bert Servas, who later became, I think he was the editor and publisher of the Saturday Evening Post. And we wrote things, and the teachers I had wonderful teachers. Again, I didn't know that, but they were always encouraging us to do whatever we wanted to do.
What did you do after you graduated from high school?
I went to Indiana University and graduated with a degree in journalism.
Did you want to be a foreign correspondent?
Yes, I did. I don't think there were any women foreign correspondents, but I didn't. I thought, well, that's too bad. It was all very glamorous then. By the time I graduated, the war had started, the World War II, and so that was very exciting. And Ernie Pyle from Indiana was a columnist, and he was over with the GIs in Europe, and William Shire and all those people, and I thought that would be marvelous. But I couldn't get a job on a newspaper, which was sort of where to begin.
Was there any particular person, like Edward R. Murrow, who might have inspired you toward the foreign correspondent thing?
Well, as I said, probably Edward R. Murrow, but by the time he was becoming very prominent, I was already in radio and not the news end of it. I was offered a job at a radio station in Indianapolis, and I've been looking for a job for a couple of months, so I thought, well, I'll take that. And then the newspaper job I wanted opened up, and I had to make a choice, and I decided I'd stay with the radio.
And that was that a network affiliate, that station?
It was WIRE, the NBC station in Indianapolis. Yeah.
How did we touched on this briefly, but being a woman in the field of journalism at that time, especially broadcast, how did that affect you? I mean, or being a woman, how did that affect?
Well, I wasn't really in the news department there. I just did commercials and little musical things, and if I had worked on the newspaper at that time, I would have been on what they used to call the society page. But I figured, well, I'd get on the society page, and then I would work my way into becoming a regular reporter. That was my sort of vague plan. But then I got into a totally different kind of writing at that time.
So when you were doing the ad copy, or were there other women involved with that? Or?
Yes, the head of the department was a woman, and she was a friend of mine. That's how I got the job.
You moved to Hollywood in 1942?
No, I didn't come out. I was in Indianapolis. I just got out of school in 42. And then I worked in Indianapolis for a year, about a year and a half. And then I came here, so I came out here about 43, 44, something like that.
What brought you out here?
One of my sisters was living here, and my father had died, and my mother said, why don't we come out to California? She had been here once and liked it a lot. And I said, fine. I thought it was a good idea.
Were you able to get a job right away, or was it, you were working for an NBC affiliate, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, again, when you're that age, you don't know that it's unusual, but I had letters to the 3 executive vice presidents of the networks, and I thought everybody did, I guess. The station was owned in Indianapolis by Eugene Pulliam, Dan Quayle's grandfather, and he gave me letters to everybody. So I came out all armed with these marvelous contacts, and I got a job at NBC in a couple of weeks.
And what did you do there? Was it also ad copy, or?
Well, it was just kind of musical shows and bits and pieces. They didn't own their own big local station at that time, and so we weren't right. We were writing mostly for the Pacific Network, the feeds, and so I went to CBS because they had a staff writer. They had a bunch of staff writers, and they owned KNX at that time, which is now KNXT, of course. So I thought, well, I can do better there, and I met some people from there, and I went over there and asked for a job, and they hired me as a junior writer.
What was Hollywood like when you got here? What impression did it make on you?
Well, there were wagons, no. Well, it was all very exciting, and also the war was on, so people were coming out here in droves. I mean, I was like a USO because anyone that I had known in school ever would always call me when they got here, and it was fun. It was we were at Sunset and Gower, and we used to go up to Hollywood Boulevard and mill around and meet friends and go to lunch, and it was fun. It was a small town kind of.
So Hollywood Boulevard at that time was a viable place to go.
It was, yes.
Did the war have a great effect on you?
Well, yes. Probably I wouldn't have had any of the jobs I had if it hadn't been for the war, because usually men were drafted or went in the army, and women were not working that much then. So that was the reason I think I got these jobs. Someone had to leave, and I was the second woman hired at CBS on staff. The first one was Kathleen Height, and she had been there 6 months when I came, and mostly they only had men writers.
So when you got to CBS, were you, the junior writer position, was that involved with programming?
Yes, everybody wrote, and they told me that I would make me a senior writer. They'd have me doing research for some show that they had, and they said, well, you'll do that for a few months, and then we'll make you a senior writer. So it was kind of a beginning. They didn't even have an office for me, and I worked in the supply closet with a writer named Jack Newman, who was hired at the same time, and he's done a lot of TV and movies.
When did you first hear about television?
Well, I think it was in the late 40s. They called all the writers and they took us to see something in a room, in a conference room, and it was all kind of, blurry and jerky. I said, what is that? It doesn't look like much of anything. And by this time we were working, I think it was about that time we were working for Lucille Ball on her radio show, which I'm sure is coming up shortly. And it didn't make any impression. I remember just saying, I don't know what they're talking about.
Did you, by chance, visited the 39 World's Fair in New York?
I don't think so.
Now we can talk about when you and Bob first met.
Well, I say that he came over to visit a friend of mine at NBC, and I met him, and he says that he took me home from the CBS Bowling League, so I don't really know. It's one of those. It was a long time ago.
What did you think of him when you met him?
Well, I think I was very impressed because he and his partner Larry Roman were writing some show for Hedda Hopper, and he was sort of big time and with Pacific Network or local or whatever. And I thought, wow, he's a big writer. And I didn't really get to know him until I went to CBS a few months later.
Was there any inkling that you would be partners someday?
I don't think so. I think we just sort of drifted together when we were on staff, and they put us together to write some early shows. One was a little domestic comedy called The Couple Next Door. And then we wrote for Steve Allen. He was just beginning. He was very new. He'd just come here from Arizona, and he had a show called It's a Great Life, which had sketches and all. We wrote that together for Steve. And we found we worked well together and liked it.
Okay, that concludes Madeline's portion.